welcome back everybody to my video on how I won my speeding ticket case in Hillsborough County, Florida. I'm sporting my nifty, let me get this out of the way. I'm sporting my 813 shirt, compliments of Elevated Designs, but anyway, representing the area in which I currently reside. That being said, listen, I'm going to let you listen to the audios from this case, and of course, it's always a narrative. But the facts in your case may be somewhat different than the facts in my case. So always keep that in mind, and definitely keep in mind that I'm not an attorney. I do not practice law. I don't have a license to practice law. What I do is study the law and tell people what I've learned based upon my experiences and how I got the information. I'm not going to give you any information as advice to apply to your specific case, but just general information regarding the law and lawful principles. Okay. That being said, if you like what you see here, or you want to know more about what I do, you can go to my website, which is gregdoss.com. You can see the services that we do. We're really just consultants trying to help people out who may be in situations like myself and you can't afford adequate representation, or you just don't feel comfortable taking every matter you have to an attorney and feeling that you're not getting the results that you need to get. But I tell people all the time, even if you have an attorney, never forget, he's your attorney or she's your attorney, but it's ultimately your case, and nobody, and the hustlers know, nobody's going to hustle the hustle like you do. Your hustle like you do. So it's always good to be informed when it comes to situations involving you. Again, if you like what you see here also, you can always support the channel. And of course, you know what the YouTube channel is. It's Greg Doss. And hey, listen, I'm going to tell you, you're going to hear some things during this this case that I don't necessarily, I don't approach it the same way now. You may hear a little bit more of the alter ego of mine, Squid, pop his head in there every now and then, but I've told people who know a little bit more about me that the courtroom is not the place for Squid. The courtroom is a place for Greg, because Squid would probably get a bunch of contempt charges and spend a lot of time in jail, which is probably what they wanted to do with me anyway. And in this situation, I actually went to jail, had to get bonded out, and continued to fight. I want to make this also clear, since I'm actually talking about this. The multitude of driving out license cases that I had, the reason I did not want to pay the reinstatement fee, even though I had gotten rid of the child support cases, we'll get more into the child support stuff later on, is because I just said that you all took the license without affording me adequate pre-deprivation due process or immediate post-deprivation due process. That is always my issue. So I know people probably think that's a little bit extreme, but hey, I can be Nelson Mandela on principle. And I'm willing to go to jail on principle. And ultimately, I conceded only because of the fact that there was the incident that happened, I believe, in 2019, where there's lights on me and so many police officers that I couldn't actually see them because the lights were that bright. So I started paying attention to their shadows to see how they were moving. And they essentially emptied my pockets and all but undressed me on the side of the road over a traffic stop. And of course, the other interesting information that may be in their David system. But without further ado, let's get to my case, which is actually two cases. Actually, two out of the citation for the speeding, which is 15 TR, which I guess it stands for traffic, civil traffic, 115118. You can look it up, but I'll show it to you later on. And the criminal charge of 15 CT 021523. I'll show you both of the cases at the conclusion when we get into the final breakdown of the case. So without any further ado, let's listen to the case of the state of Florida versus me.
Sergeant Doss.
Good morning. They just butchered my name.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
We're going to see. Before we begin, I'd like to have Prevail if he could bring my information and also provide documentation for the state attorney beyond what she may already have, but also file information.
Hold on 1 second. Let me take a look at your record here. What's going on with your child support situation?
Well, I don't have a child support situation. I know I'm very special appearance, but there's some issues relative to some so-called or alleged child support debt. I filed for validations of debt. I've also filed counterclaims against the Department of Revenue, whomever
alleging agency is. Nobody has ever proven or shown that I have any child or children.
Okay.
So what I want to do is to bring in whomever it is who may have entered any information into any system relative to me. I want to see that person.
All right. Well, you're here for driving while license suspended or revoked with knowledge and speeding. How do you plead to those 2 charges?
I don't want to hear a plea. I don't think I was doing either one of those things. Actually, I know I wasn't doing either one of those things. If possible, could I have my documentation? I don't think she has everything.
Yeah, get your documentation.
Hey, I want to say this also. Originally, this case was a felony as well. I actually forgot about that until he mentioned it, because it was actually a felony when he arrested me and charged me with the felony, like a habitual drive without license guy. But what's interesting is I had started my run of DWLS drive without license suspensions wins. But in the state of Florida, I believe it's 3 times, and they can habitualize you. And there's some guys that I found out were going to prison for driving without license, and many of the times their licenses were suspended for child support. Now, we all know that child support would be a financial issue and not an issue directly related to the operation of a motor vehicle. There's some nuance to that, so let's not just grab that piece that I said and run off with it and get yourself in some trouble. Again, this took a lot of study, and as the time went on, I was just like, hey, I'm gonna figure this thing out one way or the other, and the best way to figure out anything is to address it head on. So the DWLS with knowledge is a felony, but because it was reduced, that's why I'm in Judge O'Neill's circuit court. So now we all understand that. Let's get back to the audio.
I was going to ask for a camera hearing with the state attorney, but there's one issue also. There was a bond that was on this case that's tied up, which is $2,000 because
they arrested you?
Yes, they're unlawfully. I told him to take it before a judge, which is interesting. He didn't want to do that. I'll get to that later because also part of the counterclaim is in on this case.
You can't file a counterclaim in the criminal charge.
There's a criminal charge. It has to meet all the necessary prerequisites for a criminal offense. But I want, let's go ahead and get rid of that bond because I have $2,000 tied for nothing. The bond was already reduced. I've gone through this. Is actually an issue of res judicata. I've done this 3 times in this county already. So I want to get rid of the case, but I want whoever put that information into that David system, I don't know who they are. Because I know the information is false and they do too. And everybody's ducking around and hiding under agencies and under titles. This is kind of long.
But do you understand? The only thing I'm dealing with is the alleged driver while license.
I want to enter a plea. And with that being said, I've already filed for the discovery.
Okay.
I also put in the bill of particulars and an affidavit of non-corporate existence. I also did a challenge to this.
Hold on, what's the last one? The affidavit of what?
The non-corporate existence.
I don't know what is that? Tell me about that.
Well, we know that through Dr. Pepper versus Crow. I don't know what that nomin is that they're using for the so-called spelling. I guess this is what they were referring to me. So I went ahead and corrected that for them. So just in case there's any discrepancy or any confusion, I won't enter a plea. But what I will ask you to do is to tell the court to release that $2,000 they're holding for no reason at all and give me an ROR. Because he filed it as a felony, and we know it's not a felony. And so I just want you to release my money. And then just give me an ROR. I've never missed any other.
ROR.
Okay, and then tell them to release it. Bond, and then we can deal with it once they decide they want to respond to discovery or dismiss the action.
So they ain't gonna dismiss it.
We heard that before.
All right, your next court date is gonna be December. I assume you don't want me to appoint the public defender.
You're correct in that. I don't deal with attorneys.
All right, your next court date will be December 2nd at 8:30.
And if I want to file any other plea or any other demands within this action, I guess I have to speak to your secretary because I've done this in Hillsborough County. I've done this with Judge Farr and Judge Conrad on multiple occasions.
Let's file it with the clerk's office.
Not a problem. So we are clear that the bond is now released. I can get my money back.
All right.
You have a great day, y'all.
All right. But now, this fight court December the 2nd.
I'm more interested in finding out who these alleged individuals are than you are. Trust me.
All right.
You have a great day. I'll take care.
All right, people. Now, if you finish laughing at it, it was more serious, I guess, then than I guess it sounds now. Let me go ahead and do some housekeeping. There's some rambling going on there even by me about the the all caps name and all that. I don't have any proof that them spelling my name in all caps. Had they spelled it in all lowercase, had they put in a password, had they misspelled the name, that would have been grounds to have the action dismissed. Now, if anybody can say that they have bona fide proof that issue alone will get a case dismissed, please forward it to me because it would make my life a lot easier. And, well, hopefully I don't have any more of these damn situations. But we can share with everybody and say, okay, this case in this area could either be persuasive or binding to the issue of the way that your name is spelled on your license and everything else. That could be a default. Hell, I don't even know. And if anybody has any information to show me otherwise, please let me know. Because none of that had anything to do with them dismissing this case. The second thing is, as it relates to the counterclaim stuff, I don't have any proof that works either. If somebody can show me how to effect a counterclaim for a bad arrest or what have you, please let me know. But I know you could, if you, like this case that I won here, if there weren't other situations going on in my personal life, I would probably have I did file this in federal court. It was dismissed without prejudice, meaning I can bring it back because I won the case. So winning the case means that they started an action, it ended up being resolved in my favor. I can bring an action against the officer and the municipal for malicious prosecution. So I actually still had that one. If you go into the federal court, I think you'll actually find that case. It was dismissed. I kind of filed it for the sake of preserving that case, and I'll make sure I put a note here to show everybody the federal case. Show the federal case for this one with Officer Mario. He'll spell his name later on. Res judicata. The decision never rested as to the issue of the license being returned. I don't believe I'd ever filed an action directly addressing the license being suspended for child support, me paying the reinstatement fee. For those who watched the I think I have a case of video. Oh, it was inside of the child support, being bullied versus the bully, where the judge made him give me my license back in 2000, I think it was 19. That's the first time that I actually said, I'm not paying you people anymore. I got the license back. I paid the reinstatement fee to the Department of Motor Vehicles only because of the incident that preceded me getting it was the bunch of cops going above and beyond for a simple traffic stop. And also, this case was not in the same courthouse as I'd been in all the other proceedings. It was in Plant City, which is still in Hillsborough County. I guess because of where he stopped me, the courthouse of jurisdiction was Plant City, not the Hillsborough County Courthouse, which would have given me Judge Farr. Judge Farr, after I had one or two successful wins in his courtroom, transferred it over to Plant City. I didn't ask why. I just went to Plant City and proceeded to do what I normally do, which is learn more about the law by addressing my matters directly. So now, this one, as you see, is on March the 9th. I think the other one happened in October. I don't know what the other date was that I went to court for it. We'll look at the docket and we'll be able to figure out what was going on with the court dates. But I'll definitely show everybody the court dockets and the end results, which you're going to hear through these audios. But I've done this so that people can have an idea of how things work. And actually, I didn't even know about this speeding situation, how they were doing how they tested you for speeding. But you're going to hear a cross-examination. You'll hear probably some more of me rambling and me talking about removing it to the federal court, which is not going to be proper because states do have the right to enforce traffic laws. And because the state police powers allows them to do that, even if there was an issue that the federal court could address, until the completion of your case, at least in Florida, the federal courts, and it's probably it's actually standard, the federal court would do what's called abstain. Like they say about certain people with sex and drugs or whatever, you abstain. They're going to keep their hands off of it until the completion of the case, unless there's actually an issue of federal law that would allow you to file for some sort of intermediate or interlocutory injunctive relief along the way. But generally, they're going to let the case get finished in the lower court, and then after that, you can appeal yourself all the way up, unless it's an issue definitely of a federal question that the federal courts would have jurisdiction in prior to the case concluding. And again, just look up the abstention doctrine, and you'll understand how that kind of works. But let's get through that, and let's see. Also, a lot of my other dialogue at the time would have been what I call internet fodder, going on certain sites, and I'm not saying any names. Maybe those guys were just better at what they were doing than me, and I was repeating stuff that I don't use anymore. I just stay with procedure and the fundamentals of law, using case law. I do my own pleadings or filings, and I do those things organically. I don't use forms or templates. But don't forget, in law, there's no such thing as plagiarism. In law, it's called precedent. And no matter what's going on, after years of doing this, I've learned one thing also. Always request the agency policy for radar surveillance, traffic stops, and what the detaining officer has to do when he makes an arrest. Now, we can go a lot further in this with some other stuff that I've learned since I started doing more study of these situations. And look for the radar's manufacturer in their malfunction history, their documents, everything associated with your case. And what you're going to hear in this one is do not interrupt the prosecutor. I did it quite a few times. I generally, it's kind of disrespectful to interrupt anybody when they're speaking. You can make a timely objection, because if you don't make a timely objection, remember you can't appeal. That's in I believe, the Preparing for Court video that I have. And stand firm on your position. You don't have to be disrespectful, but you can always stand firm on your position. And there's some nuance about these proceedings that I learned only because I was willing to go into the courtrooms and fight these cases. So I kind of learned some what we call courtroom etiquette along the way. And don't forget that testimony without substance isn't admissible. Now, in one of the audio that you're not going to hear, I make a comment to the prosecutor about him trying to backdoor in information that I thought was, at the time, inadmissible, and that I thought was, I would say now, was done in bad faith. And again, some of this stuff is going to kind of sound like comedic relief. But let's get back to the issue at hand, the audio for my case for driving without license and speed.
What case you have? Mr. Dawes? Mr. Dawes? Yes, sir. Well, your case can be transferred to federal court, so I'll deny that request. Your statement of non-corporate existence, I have no idea what that means. You want to explain that?
Just within the spelling on and for the record, on the special appearance, the non-corporate denial, and it's a Dr. Pepper versus Crow. So I don't know. There's been so many different spellings of I guess the nomen related to me or my property. So I just want to make sure we get it clear. that you're speaking to me, a product of the creator, and not something else. And that's pretty much what that means.
All right.
And you said you're going to deny. Now, the reservation of rights to move into the corporate arena is based on, I know there's the abstention doctrine that they worry about until this case closes. If in fact it's a criminal case, which I know it's not a criminal case because the prerequisites for a crime don't exist. And I've yet to receive any discovery at all other than a basic template discovery.
Can you mute your mic?
Certain things specifically that were denied. And those things are guaranteed under the Florida Constitution as well as the United States Constitution as far as any evidence or information they're going to use to try to further this particular allegation. So that's why I want to make sure I put that reservation on the record. And if you're going to deny that, then I'll just object.
All right. And tell me about your objection to a non-jury trial.
Well, if this was a criminal action, and I know it's not, which would be cognizable under the Constitution, I'd be guaranteed a right to a trial by jury. If this is essentially an infraction, I just want them to come forward and produce it. It's not subject to a jury trial issue anyway. It's not even subject to a hearing because they haven't provided any discovery. And for the record and on the record, I want some clarity. When they switch counsel, somebody should inform me that I got a new counsel. Not that I have an issue with him being there, but
Well, he's not your counsel.
well,
He's
no,
the state
no,
counsel.
the state's not here. The state can't produce anything. The state's a piece of paper in Tallahassee. We all know that. Okay, my point is when they switched from Mrs. Ray away, somebody should inform me because my communication, I guess, was going to Miss Way even through the portal.
Well, he gets it. If you
Okay,
send it to her, she gets it.
Are you speaking for him, or is he gonna speak for himself?
I'll tell you, he will get it.
Okay,
All right.
I like to have him speak as well.
But this is what's about to happen. The deputy is about to tell us why he stopped you and what happened after he stopped you. You will have an opportunity if you'd like to ask him some questions.
Okay, well, if he's gonna speak to something I've already requested discovery for and I haven't been granted it, then I would say let's go ahead and I'm gonna already move to dismiss or strike his testimony because I'm sure it's not the deputy's fault that he didn't produce it. I don't think that you all asked him to produce it.
What discovery?
Real quick, I wanted to make sure I touched on a couple of things. Again, this is almost comedic relief at this, this far in my learning. But when he was saying that if I send it to one, the other gets it, it's called constructive knowledge. So essentially, it's constructive knowledge because it's in the record and it's imputed from one party, in one state attorney or prosecutor to another prosecutor. So if I tell your buddy who works with you something, it also applies to you. So just keep that in mind. So that was not really a big deal. And also, I had to look at the document. I can't even remember what I filed about removing it to the federal court. But if you want to do a notice of removal, you remove it to the federal court by filing it in the federal court, which would then divest the lower court of its jurisdiction. And once that happens, then the federal court is probably going to remand it unless there is an issue of federal law that has to be addressed before the case can proceed. But once you do a notice of removal and it's removed to the federal court, the lower court is divested of jurisdiction. And you can look up that rule. And again, it's not legal advice.
You want you haven't received?
First of all, I want all the audio and video of the incident. I want some proof that for what he's getting ready to profit. Not that he's going to lie.
Is there any audio or video of the stop? No. Okay, there is no audio and video of the stop.
Is there any proof other than his testimony?
No. That's why you get a chance to cross-examine him.
Well, then he doesn't have any testimony by which there's no facts by which he can base his testimony on them.
It's testimony. That's evidence. Testimony is evidence.
Well, let me ask you this question. Am I going to receive a impartial decision?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Raise your right hand, sir. Are you going to testify?
No.
You swear the statement you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, sir. All right, state you may proceed.
Hey, listen, the fact that there's no audio and no camera doesn't mean that there could be no evidence or he couldn't provide testimony based upon what he's going to say is his firsthand account. I've learned that along the way. But what would be kind of interesting, and I made a point of it earlier, is if there's a specific policy that spoke to the audio and video for that vehicle, and that vehicle's and he did not follow the policy, that could be grounds for dismissal because it's a violation of well-established policy in particular, and possibly even law. Because at the time, I can't recall how the law was. I know in the city of Tampa, the moment that the lights come on, their audio and their cameras are supposed to become active. They become hot at that moment, and the only way for them not to come on or for them to stop recording is it has to be through some sort of manual means. But I just wanted to throw that out there for you.
For the record, the state did provide discovery to Mr. Doss at the address provided. So 3612 North 55th Street, Tampa, Florida, and that was on November 17th, 2015. That did include a police report. That did include citation and a driving record.
You may proceed.
Objection. That didn't satisfy everything that was asked for. Again, he speaks for somebody else.
Deputy, would you please state your name for the record?
Yes, sir. Deputy James Milo. Last name is spelled M as in Mike. Aieello.
Okay, where are you currently employed?
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been employed with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
Almost 5 years.
And what are some of your duties as a deputy with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
Respond to calls for service, enforce traffic violations as I see them.
Okay, and were you working on September 16th, 2015?
Yes, sir.
Okay, on that day, did you come into contact with someone who subsequently became known to you as Sugret Rania Doss?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that person present in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Would you identify that individual by an article of clothing he or she may be wearing?
Yes, sir. He's standing next to you wearing a collared shirt, gray on top with lime green in the middle.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the deputy has identified the defendant?
So reflected.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, what were the circumstances under which you interacted with Mr. Doss on September 16th of 2015?
Yes, sir. I was conducting traffic enforcement in the area of 301 Highway and Interstate 75.
You're conducting what?
Traffic enforcement?
Traffic?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Traffic enforcement in the area of 301 Highway and Interstate 75. That's within Hillsborough County, Florida. I was running stationary radar. I was facing southbound on the inside lane, which is the left lane, off to the side of the road on the inside shoulder. I observed a vehicle that appeared to be speeding that was coming from behind me. I observed a white Cadillac CTS. I visually observed and I visually estimated the vehicle speed at 65 miles an hour and a 50 mile per hour speed limit zone. I activated my rear incoming antenna from our radar unit in my patrol vehicle. I heard an audible Doppler tone that was steady and consistent with a vehicle that would be exceeding the 50 mile per hour speed limit. I also observed a readout on the radar display that said 67 miles per hour. The vehicle then drove past me. I got
Excuse me, one. Objection. Could he repeat? Well, I'm going to object to it for so far in the entirety because nothing's been provided that would substantiate this. But with that being, could he repeat what he said about the stationary radar and the 67 mile thing?
If you would repeat that testimony.
Yes, sir. Running stationary radar enforcement in the area. There are two different modes on the radar unit. One is stationary, one is moving. If you're moving, then you would be running moving radar. I was stationary at that point in time, so I was running stationary radar. Once I observed the vehicle with my eyes, I saw that it was speeding. It was exceeding the speed limit. I estimated the vehicle's speed at 65 miles per hour. The speed limit in that area is 50 miles per hour. I activated my rear radar antenna. There's a button on a remote where it activates the rear antenna to the radar unit. And you can select incoming or outgoing. So if the vehicle's coming from behind you or coming at you, I selected the one that was coming from behind me. I observed a visual readout on my radar counting display, which is 67 miles per hour. I also heard a steady Doppler tone, which a radar unit makes when it detects some sort of speed on any vehicle. It makes specific tones based on how fast that vehicle is going and according to your patrol speed, which my patrol speed was 0 because I was stationary. I observed the display say 67 miles per hour. I
excuse me, clarify which display. The display on the radar or the display on your unit, or what display?
The radar has a counting unit and then it has a display.
On the radar itself, so not associated with the vehicles.
Correct.
Definitely object to that. That would have been something I asked you before, but okay, go ahead.
Continue.
Yes. Observe the display say 67 miles per hour. I observed a 2008 white Cadillac CTS drive past me. I pulled in behind the vehicle. I conducted a traffic stop using my emergency lights and siren, my emergency equipment. Conducted a traffic stop at 301 Highway and Bloomingdale Avenue, just south of. The defendant, who came to know as Mr. Sergert Doss, pulled into the Wawa gas station located at Bloomingdale and 301. The exact address is in my report. Do you mind if I refresh my recollection of the address?
You may refresh your recollection.
This vehicle pulled into 10115 Bloomingdale Avenue, which is the Wawa gas station located at 301 Highway and Bloomingdale Avenue. I voiced the traffic stop over the District 4 main radio. I approached on the driver's side of the vehicle, where I came into contact with a black male adult, who was later identified as Mr. Sergert Doss. I informed Mr. Doss on the reason for the traffic stop. I asked him for his driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. The driver advised a direct quote. If you don't mind me refresh my recollection from my report for a direct quote.
You may.
He said, quote, "I don't have a driver's license." End quote.
Objection. That would have been something that should have been notified through the audio when those lights came on.
Overruled.
Surveillance. Okay. Just want to make sure the objection is noted for the record.
So reflected.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. I then went back to my marked patrol vehicle, where I queried Mr. Doss through David, which stands for Driver and Vehicle Information Database. It houses DHS and VA Department Highway Safety Motor Vehicle Information relating to drivers and vehicles in the state of Florida. I queried Mr. Doss through David, and I observed that his license has been suspended 3 times in the past, and that he has been convicted for it 3 times in the past.
Objection.
What's the basis?
And that would be something that's outside of discovery as well, because they didn't provide that, and I also wanted to show proof of that, as well as the so-called
State, why is
David
that not hearsay?
It's not offered for the truth of the matter, sir, Your Honor. It's just
Hold on, sir, don't do that.
Your Honor, it's not offered in testimony as the truth of the matter asserted. It's offered to demonstrate the officer's understanding at that point in time of the individual that he was encountering at that point in time.
Okay, that's that interruption thing I was talking about. And again, I ain't an attorney, but I definitely was learning on the run. And by the way, I don't recall, particularly at that time, if there was any Florida law or statute that says that if somebody was stopped for driving without a license, that they're supposed to confiscate the license, because the license is essentially a property. I don't know that the state could, at the same time it tells you have to be able to identify yourself, take the identification. Now, they could probably have done something else along the way, but there may be an issue that could be a statute that could be challengeable if they were going to say they're going to take your property. I don't know. But the underlying reason, and I haven't done the video on that situation yet, because it's going to be a pretty long one. The reason I did not have the license is because the last officer who didn't show up to court and I ultimately won that case, stole my property. So I wasn't going to pay for it, which I know people say was pretty hard-headed to me, but I wanted him to give me my junk back without me paying for it, actually my property back, without having to pay a ransom for something you took improperly. I kicked your ass in court, give me my shit back. That being said, let's get back to some of the audio and the more important matters. And again, don't try all this at home, but I did manage to win. But let's learn something from some of the foolishness that I did along the way in getting this win.
Objection. If I'm correct, didn't you not provide a David informational? Wasn't that requested as well in discovery?
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection for that single purpose.
Okay.
All right. Next question, Council.
Now, when you looked up Mr. Doss, were you able to find a driving record?
Yes, sir, I was.
And was there a driver's license number associated with that record?
Yes, sir, there was.
Do you recall that number, or would reviewing your report help to refresh your recollection of remembering that driver's license number?
Objection. He cannot testify to something he has no direct knowledge of.
You got a certified copy of his driving record?
Your Honor, I do have a copy of the driving record that's printed off of Odyssey. It is a self-authenticating document.
Objection is not self-authenticating.
It's what now?
It's a self-authenticating
No, it's
document.
not.
Let me take a look at what you have.
Objection to being offered in the evidence by the
It's
attorney.
not in the evidence. I'm looking at it.
Objection to him even attempting to offer. That's an ethics issue. Moreover, while you look at that, My Honor, let me make sure. I'm gonna make this perfectly clear.
Hold on, sir.
Okay.
All right. Deputy, have a seat. Sir, if you would have a seat, I'm gonna call some other cases, and then we're gonna look at this again. Pick it up from there.
Thank you so very much.
Nicholas A.
Now, as I recall, I think he for the most part just got a lot of the other simpler things out, more simple cases out of the way, and then he called up me and the deputy to continue this situation again. This was more funny. It's more funny in retrospect. My behavior and Judge Artemis was all right. You know, he probably reminds a lot of us of one of our uncles or our cousins or somebody, but he was definitely a decent judge, and it was probably a lot more of this was on me. And I got better as time went along, of course, but it only got better because of the consequence of the repetition. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was always in and out of these dang places about my license or driving without a license. And again, my issue wasn't that I wasn't arguing that I could just move around without a license or the license couldn't restrict me as much as I was somebody took my interest in my property without affording me adequate pre-deprivation or post-deprivation due process. And I'll stick to that because that's what it is. You can't take my junk and then not give me an ability to adequately defend it and or take it under a false pretense or a non-substantiated pretense. So we'll get back to more of what's important, which is the merits of this action.
State, what's that statute that allows the Florida Florida DHSMV record to be admitted?
I believe it's 322.201.
You can come up, Deputy. Record is evidence, a copy, computer copy, or transcript of all abstract of crash report and abstract of court record of conviction received by the department and the complete driving record of any individual certified by the department or by the clerk of court. Where is this certified?
Your Honor, this was actually from Odyssey. This was directly printed off of Odyssey this morning.
Okay, but what does that mean? that is directly printed off all of
Your
it.
Honor, it's from the clerk's direct record, Your Honor.
But doesn't have to be certified.
I believe it is already certified.
Your Honor, it's certified by the director of the DHSMB with the signature that's on it.
There's an objection to that. We don't even know that's his signature. It would have been really easy for you to have brought him in because he's the one I asked to come in anyway. And by the way, an attorney can't
Hold on.
do that.
You keep talking while I'm trying to read.
It's not you, and I think we all know where my issue lies with the situation. It's definitely not the deputy.
Yeah. You know, and I listened to this again. I've heard it more than a few times, I guess. It's kind of comical. Maybe a better objection would have been that the accuracy of the record was in dispute, and that probably would have given me a better bridge to travel on. As far as the non-certified part, that's debatable. I just think I could have done it a little bit better than I did with this right here. But there's definitely plenty of law that would have helped me, even if I had the necessity to appeal even came up. I was in pretty good shape. It probably would have been a labor, but I would have gotten through it nonetheless. But this is funnier today than it was back then. I was probably a little bit aggravated then. And some of the some of the files or the audios that we're not going to cover in this video contain a little bit of my frustration. So if you want them, you can request them. I'll probably send them. Or it's in the Dropbox, and you can go ahead and get it and do what you want with it as far as using it for study material.
Yeah, I don't want to sound hostile. I'm not hostile with these judge arguments.
I know you know. All right. It says that in compliance with Section 322.201 Florida statute, I, Robert Knopp, Director of the Division of Motor Services, Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, State of Florida, do hereby certify that I am the custodian of records of said division, and that this is a true and correct transcript of the above named subject driving record as taken from the official records on file in this department. So I'm going to allow it in.
And I'll object to the information within the record.
All right.
Again, if Walden is the director, is he the one that would be held responsible for the information that comes through this record? Because if he's saying there's convictions, and those convictions should be able to be found within the court system.
Yeah, the convictions are on here.
I'll look at the dating on that as well. Okay.
All right. This is your opportunity if you'd like to ask the deputy.
As to the issue of dating, I believe I might have been referring to the amount of chronological time between the last quote-unquote conviction and where we are now. So say like 10 years have gone by, there may be in a statute where the conviction would have fallen off for consideration purposes. Like, going back 100 years to try to grab something, particularly because it's a misdemeanor issue. And in fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably go back in 3850 motion some of those things, because they were charging, or maybe I should ask for injunctive relief. They were charging people criminally for an issue that was actually based upon an ability to pay issue. That's a civil issue. In fact, if you look at the Florida statutes, and you can go into your own state because it could be something that's a little bit similar. In fact, I'll do that right here since we're here. We're on the break. And again, we're here talking about my case, but I wanted to show you all something. And we know how to do this. Yeah, I have all these little things, and you'll see some of this stuff I have here. This case text, hey, let me tell you something. Everybody should have case text. Everybody should have Lexus. Well, case text is affordable. Let's go ahead and get this one out of here. This is much more affordable, and from there you can kind of get a lot more information. I think I work on my doggone website, but case text is affordable. So, and so is parallel search. And if not, get together with teams of people and you all use this information and you'll find that you can do better. I didn't have all this back then. But let's go into 322.058 of the Florida statutes. It'll pop up. And what you're going to see is this is an administrative suspension. Come on here. There you go, damn it. Suspension due to support delinquency and then the reinstatement. And you can kind of look at this and see exactly how it works. And you can do the control F function thing. I mean, control plus is good. Well, I'm getting bigger. Maybe it's because of this. I'm using this program. Okay, there we go. Now, the license being suspended for a Title 4D issue is different than a license being suspended for something that has to do with the operation of the vehicle. At least that's my contention. And even Judge Fuson, when we were discussing it, we were talking about, well, that's improper. And in fact, if it was suspended for an administrative reason, then you had the right to an immediate administrative review. That immediate judicial review is something that would have to have had taken place close to the time they took the license. There are a lot of nuance involved in that, but I just wanted to show you that. But what they charged me with was a criminal infraction, not a civil issue. The civil issue would have allowed the case to go into a traffic court proceeding and not a criminal proceeding. And in fact, I'm going to show it to you. Now, as you can see right here is driving while license suspended, revoked, canceled, disqualified, and there's a different set of circumstances that have to be covered whenever you're dealing with the driving while license suspended for an infraction for a situation that has to do with the operation of the motor vehicle. And that's an argument that you can make as to why it was suspended. And they were going to take away your driving privilege. It has to be for a reason that is relatable to the suspension. So this is an argument that can be made 1,000 different kind of ways, and it's also based upon a set of facts in your case. So keep that in mind whenever you decide that you want to go ahead and, if you have this kind of situation, even in your own state. But again, don't forget the state law, the laws for states vary, and thus, you want to be familiar with state law, state precedent before you get into making certain arguments. And of course, I didn't have all this information to this degree when I was going through these situations, but I thought it'd be important to show everybody exactly what's going on when it comes to this stuff. And by the way, I know I've done it in other videos. This right here is a beautiful tool. It's about $100 a month, but case text and parallel search are the greatest things since sliced bread. I would stand by it. I've had Westlaw, I've had LexisNexis, I have ProView. I have to actually incorporate onto this computer. Let me tell you something. It is a very good tool to have, and maybe I have to put them on each one. No, there we go. I'm back in. So now let's say we're going to see driver's license suspension. Driver's license, see. One of the seminal cases is Bell versus Burson. That's a Supreme Court case about your right to maintaining your license, and there's a lot of nuance that's come about since then. I always go into Florida, but let's do this right here for jurisdiction. Let's go Florida, and let's always look for a federal United States Supreme Court case as far as driver's license and due process, and driver's license due process and meaningful hearing. Now, I want to tell you, I don't know about your state, but Florida is a judicial state, and in some states in the United States are what's called non-judicial states, and their administrative courts have quite a bit of power. But as you can see right here, when the court suspends or revokes a driver's license, the judicial process itself provides a form for an evidentiary hearing with notice and an opportunity to be heard. Again, the facts of your situation are what's going to determine what your reasonable remedy is. That's just one thing I just grabbed for you all to see. I don't want to get too far off the purpose of this case. Off of this video. But if you want me to do a video on whatever, just let me know. We can do a video, or once I decide to come back on to doing live radio or my blogs, I can address some of these issues.
There's some questions about his testimony. Yeah, isn't that now?
So you not the deputy.
We're going to go back ahead, and I'm going to roll it back because I forgot where I was, and I don't want us to lose track of where we were. But I think he's going to go ahead and start his part about that statute issue.
That statute that allows the Florida statute, the Florida DHSMV record to be admitted.
I believe it's 322.201.
You can come up, Deputy. Record is evidence. A copy, computer copy, or transcript of all abstract of crash report and abstract of court record of conviction received by the department and the complete driving record of any individual certified by the department or by the clerk of court. Where is the certified?
Your Honor, this was actually from Odyssey. This was directly printed off of Odyssey this morning.
Okay, but what does that mean? That is directly printed off Odyssey.
Your Honor, it's from the clerk's direct record, Your Honor.
But doesn't it have to be certified?
I believe it is already certified.
Your Honor, it's certified by the director of the DHSMV with the signature that's on it.
There's an objection to that. We don't even know that's his signature. It would have been really easy for you to have brought him in because he's the one I asked to come in anyway. And by the way, an attorney can't.
Hold on. You keep talking while I'm trying to read.
It's not you, and I think we all know where my issue lies with the situation. It's definitely not the deputy. And I don't want to sound hostile. I'm not hostile with these judge arguments.
I know you know. All right. It says that in compliance with Section 322.201 Florida statute, I, Robert Knopp, Director of the Division of Motor Services, Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, State of Florida, do hereby certify that I am the custodian of records of said division, and that this is a true and correct transcript of the above named subject driving record as taken from the official records on file in this department. So I'm going to allow it in.
And I'll object to the information within the record.
All right.
Again, if Walden is the director, is he the one that would be held responsible for the information that comes through this record? Because if he's saying there's convictions, and those convictions should be able to be found within the court system.
Yeah, the convictions are on here.
I'll look at the dating on that as well. Okay.
All right. This is your opportunity if you'd like to ask the deputy some questions about his testimony. Yeah. Isn't that now?
Are you finished?
Your Honor, if the court accepts that into evidence, they will say the rest of this time.
All right. Cross-examination.
I'll object to that. Being offered into evidence because it's offered by the attorney and not by the person who's competent to admit it into evidence, and we can go Trenzy versus Pagliaro or any other number of case holding for that one. So
Objection noted on record.
there we go. Now, Deputy Molly, let me ask you a question, a couple of questions. First of all, at any time were you informed by the state to provide audio associated with this stop?
Objection over that issue's been addressed prior to trial.
Sustained. There's no audio.
Okay. Did you provide any data, any digital readout, any information, or any data or digital readout of what you have testified to having seen?
Do you have any evidence other than your testimony and his driving record?
It's going pretty well. Then, okay. These are questions from here, so I still get my direct, right? But you said you enforce traffic violations. Could you please explain that to me as to what you mean by you're there to enforce traffic violations?
Yes, sir. As vehicles drive down roadways, there are certain traffic infractions that vehicles may commit. Speeding, you want to maintain a single lane. There are a lot of traffic violations that vehicles may commit while driving on roadways in the state of Florida.
No, it's just, do you know the definition of traffic?
Hey, let me say this also as it relates to that thing. That may not go anywhere with you with the case either, because that can take you down a crazy kind of road. The definition of traffic. But I wanted to say, stay away from that Trinity versus Pagliaro thing too. You can find other case law that's more supportive of what's called viable testimony. And if you're in the state of Florida, look up Chapter 90 for the rules of evidence. What's admissible, what's not admissible. And if you're not in Florida, go to your rules of evidence for your courts. Also, that's not legal advice, just a suggestion.
I don't understand that question, sir.
Well, okay. Are you gonna sustain or overrule?
Yeah, I sustain it.
Okay. Now, I heard you say persons and people, but for clarity's sake, can you define what a person is?
I'm going to object to relevance as well, Your Honor.
What's the relevance to that question, sir?
Well,
you clearly are. You're a person.
Well, I'm people. I don't know what the person thing. I'm according to the scriptures, I'm actually a God, but that's a different issue for right now. Because I want to make sure that I draw enough context to where I'm going with this right here. Beyond, also, I know you all should have the default for the counterclaim also for this traffic infraction, but you said you had a stationary radar. Now, when you say stationary, does that mean that the laser or the radar, whatever it is, the gun is pointed at one direction at all times, or does it pan?
The way the radar unit is set up in the vehicle, at least in my vehicle in particular, there's a radar unit and then there's a counting unit, which shows a display on it. Okay? Attached to that, in my car in particular, is a front antenna. It faces out of the front windshield. It's inside of my car, but it faces towards the front of my vehicle. I also have a rear antenna that sits on the rear deck of the vehicle that faces towards the rear of the vehicle. These antennas stay stationary, they do not move.
Okay. So, for clarity's sake, it's possible, and by the way, if it stands stationary, it shoots a straight beam, right? It doesn't have like a curve or a slide or anything to it. It's directional beaming, correct?
Yes, sir. A radar comes out in a cone shape.
In a cone shape.
Yes.
So is it possible that radar could pick up multiple lanes or multiple vehicles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many lanes are on that highway?
I'm not exactly sure at that exact intersection where I would run radar. If I had to take a guess, it'd probably be 4 lanes southbound and approximately 4 lanes northbound.
I'm going to slide it back in a second. I wanted to say what I learned after this right here is as I was listening, because I didn't have many questions written down. I was actually kind of sleepy. I think I was working on some other case. I didn't know what I was going through back here. But I'm asking questions based upon the answers that he gave to the state attorney prior to me getting a chance to speak to him. So I was actually writing down the questions as the state attorney and him were discussing things. So this is what would be essentially the cross-examination. And by the way, that reference to the scriptures was actually spontaneous. Mean it, but it was spontaneous. So I thought that was kind of interesting when he asked me, am I a person? That person and people thing, I don't have any proof that in and of itself, how they claim or what they claim you are or all that other stuff works. I want somebody to show me somewhere where all that stuff works. So that I don't have to spend 9, 10, 11 visits somewhere to help, or people don't have to spend 9, 10, 11 visits anywhere to get rid of cases if there's a couple of words that we can say and make things kind of go away. In each one of my cases, it just took me a long time. Maybe I'm just not that good at it. I'm only good at getting the end result, which is getting it dismissed, which again is all I care about. I just want the pretty shirt that says I won. But this is going to be a lot more interesting as this thing goes on.
So you were facing in the opposite direction that the vehicle was traveling?
No, sir. I was facing the same direction.
Same direction vehicle was traveling. Okay. Your lights were on, if I'm correct, right?
At what point in time?
Were your lights on? Were your lights on while the radar was on, or were your lights off while the radar was on?
The lights were off.
Okay. So you were in the dark. Okay. Would that darkness affect, or your lights being on or off affect the accuracy of the radar? Not that I'm asking to say for evidentiary reasons, just as a general question. Would you having the car sitting to the side in the dark have affected the accuracy, or could it affect the accuracy of the radar?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Okay.
What time? May I ask a question?
Then you become me, but okay.
What time of day was this? What time this happened?
Approximately 02:41 hours in the morning.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So we're in the dark. There may be a statutory issue with that as well, but okay. Not that the statutes are the issue, the law is where we're getting ready to go. So there are 4 lanes. Were there any other, as you recollect, any other cars on the road that night?
Before we get to the issue of answering about the cars, I'm going to go ahead and say I have this, I'll call it character flaw, what have you, a quirk. I say what I'm thinking. Sometimes what I'm thinking comes out of that this hole in my face. So the issue, some of this mumbling is probably things that would have been better for me to left to myself. So if you get yourself in a situation, don't always say what you're thinking, because it may come out and be kind of bad. And we know that in other cases that you'll find other videos that you'll hear them say things they probably shouldn't have said on mic. I don't know why I'm thinking out loud, and it may just be my newness in dealing with these situations. But of course, probably along the way, I'm probably thinking this is some BS. We can do better than this.
Yes, sir, there were other cars on the roadway. However, when I observed your vehicle driving down the roadway, it was the only vehicle at that point in time.
There were other cars, but mine was the only one. So were there other automobiles, or was mine the only one?
There were vehicles that came before you, and I assume vehicles that came after you.
So is it possible that radar could have detected a vehicle other than the vehicle that you stopped?
The way I did it, no, sir, because you were the only vehicle that was in its cone or range when I activated it.
And Your Honor, for the record, I want to object to this line of questioning. I believe that this is the appropriate venue for the appropriate process by which the defendant should challenge a stop as a motion to suppress, and not because the question at this point in time is before the court is whether he was driving and whether his license was suspended.
That comes after.
So the issue that the defendant is trying to bring up is the issue of the stop. That's not.
He's also charged with speeding, right?
There is a, yes, Your Honor, there is a citation for speeding.
Okay, so it's related to the speed.
I thought so as well. But at any rate, so what's your objection?
It's overruled. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Do you have any proof that you can provide, other than testimony, that there was no other automobile possible within a cone? And by the way, what is the dimensions of a cone and how do they work from base to maximum effective range?
Can you repeat your question again, please, sir?
What is the parameter of the cone? We all fire weapons, I guess. If you bound to Overwatch, or if you have a parameter or a perimeter that you're going to fire into, that cone is essentially doing the same thing. I'm guessing. I may be wrong because I can't provide any evidence. I don't have any information.
How wide is
How
the cone?
wide is the cone?
I'm not exactly sure.
From base to maximum
His
effective
answer
range.
is I'm not sure.
And we can definitely strike everything because now we're definitely speculating.
Why you keep making these arguments instead of asking?
No, I know. Maybe I'm speaking aloud.
Yeah, you
I
are.
am, but it's kind of interesting. Based upon your prior testimony, you see you noticed a car that appeared to be speeding. Now, when you say appeared to be speeding, are you saying it absolutely was speeding?
Yes, sir. It was speeding based on my training and experience.
Based upon your training and experience, it was speeding. You visually, through your rear view, based upon your training, can detect the absolute accuracy of anything traveling behind you.
Yes, sir. I also physically turned my head around and looked through the rear window to observe the vehicle.
But
Nope.
if he didn't have the radar, his estimate would not be sufficient.
Okay, so where's the proof from the radar?
His testimony.
That's not proof. That's testimony. But and I know we'll put. Let me say this: to accept this testimony beyond or over no other. Well,
Hold
me
on,
saying it
that's
didn't
for
happen.
closing arguments.
Okay. I'll give you the case law for that one as well. Okay, you said you visually estimated it, which I guess appeared visually. Now, when did you actually utilize the radar to detect the exact speed of the automobile?
First, I visually observed a vehicle in my rearview mirror. I then physically turned my head around to look through the rear window of my vehicle, and I observed a vehicle that was speeding. I estimated that vehicle speed at 65 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. I then used the remote for my radar unit, which is a B3 radar system. I used the remote for this system. I was already in stationary mode, so all I had to do is I had to click on rear. There's a button for rear. Then I had to click on either same side or opposing side, meaning the vehicle's coming from behind me, it would be on the same side. So I click on same side. At that point in time, my display shows an arrow of where the antenna is receiving the radar back from. Meaning, if a car is coming from behind me, the arrow would be facing, it'd be towards the right of the car that's depicted on the radar to show an arrow facing towards the front of the car. There's also a display on there, and that showed 67, which stands for 67 miles per hour. After that, before that, I heard whenever you activate the radar, it emits a Doppler tone. And it was a clear and steady tone. And there's different pitches or tones to it based on your patrol speed, which my patrol speed was 0 because I was stationary, I was not moving. So it had a very high tone to it. So I heard that tone and I looked and I saw a mile per hour of 67.
So this radar is not a gun; it's just a panning radar. It's not like it's not a definitive gun. It's just like somebody goes into an area at any time. At what point do you say exactly this is the automobile that I estimated the speeding? At what point did you get to say that's the vehicle? It's actually going 65 miles because you've already said that there were cars before and there were cars that came after. So I'm wondering, at what point did you actually lock and fixate on that vehicle? And then I definitely want the proof for that one as well.
There were vehicles that came before you because I was running traffic enforcement in that area prior to pulling you over, sir. At that point in time, when I activated the radar, you were the only vehicle on the roadway at that point in time. I assumed vehicles came after you because I wasn't running radar after that point. I had to follow after you because I was going to conduct a traffic stop.
You understand his testimony? He's saying maybe a minute earlier there was some calls, but at the time he got your car, you were the only car on the road.
Although there was cars before me and after me.
Yeah. He assumed after. He doesn't know that for sure.
Okay, yeah. So, but again, I like to see how this works because is it possible that an automobile behind me traveling X number of miles an hour could have been picked up in that as well? Since there were cars that you've already admitted you came after, or even exceeded.
Could instead of clocking his car, is it possible that there was a car that came after him that you clocked?
It's possible, sir, but I didn't see any headlights in that rearview mirror. I only saw one vehicle that was traveling on the roadway at that point in time, and that was Mr. Dolphin.
I'm satisfied with it's possible.
All right.
And you did admit to turning away at some point, correct?
Turning away how?
You turned away from the visual. You turned away from me to look in another direction, correct?
Yes, sir. I observed your vehicle.
I'm fine. I'm satisfied with that.
Anything else, sir? You be wrapping this up now.
No, I won't call this. Now, you said you noticed a 2008 Cadillac. I guess when did you notice it was a 2008 Cadillac? After the stop or prior to the stop?
I observed the white Cadillac CTS.
Okay, you just happen to know it was a 2008?
Upon conducting a traffic stop, I ascertained that it was a 2008 model year.
Okay. I'll get into the discussion of the black male thing in a while, but you said you queried David. David is the driver and vehicle identification data system, correct?
Driver and vehicle information database.
Information database.
Yes.
Did you check with anybody to find out if the information that David was accurate?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you provide whatever that so-called driving record is to the state?
Did I?
Yes.
No, sir.
Okay. So then you had no idea whether or not the information in the David was correct or not?
From what I understand, the information is processed in there and it is correct as per this paperwork.
So then you have no first-hand knowledge whether or not the information in David was correct.
Correct, sir. I never input the information in. From what is in there, it is what it is. That's what I observe. That's what I see.
Do you verify it?
I'm not exactly sure how I would verify it.
You verify it.
The answer is no.
Can I have him answer that? Did you verify it? No, it's fine. It's not your fault.
Again, I'm not sure how I would verify it, sir.
If you're not sure how to, that means you didn't do it. Correct.
That is verification for me whenever I query in that system.
So you have no first-hand. Do you have first-hand knowledge of the information?
He said no.
He has not said no, Judge Artemis. I just want him to say no.
Okay. Say no, sir.
Sir, no.
There we go. So now you're relying on information which he has no first-hand knowledge, and we know that would go out.
This is what he has. This is it.
Yeah, he can't verify that.
And how you going to dispute this? This is the state of Florida said that the state can use this to prove that your license is suspended. Do you have anything contrary to this to show that your license was not suspended at the time you were stopped?
Yeah, no court action took that license. Bell versus Burson.
Let me see your case that says that I cannot look at this and decide that your license was suspended. Let me see your case.
Well, one that's not verifiable information despite the statute.
Let me see your case that supports your argument.
The Bell versus Burson case.
Whatever case you have, let me see that supports your argument that the court cannot review this and rely upon this to show that your license was suspended at the time of the stop.
Well, that would call it this is hearsay. I'd have to go pull it.
So you don't have any case to support it.
Oh, I have plenty of cases.
Let me see.
I don't have it with me.
Well, that's like not having it.
Now, as to this back and forth with Judge O'Neill and myself, let me clean up some stuff. Now it's become courtroom drama, which I've said in other videos. Let's try to avoid courtroom drama. I knew nothing about radars and speeding and what have you prior to this cross-examination. These questions just kind of came spontaneously. I'm thinking that I've been better prepared. I would have known a little bit more. I had some background, a little basic information about the manufacturer because I did look it up. But as far as a proceeding and the speeding, this whole thing, I just knew because on the citation is the manufacturer of the radar. I learned there's a whole lot of things that they're supposed to do as far as making sure that the guns are calibrated, what have you. We didn't get that far into it. Always keep in mind that the court can't use how much time you're taking as an excuse to deprive you of due process. They can make sure that you kind of move in a constructive manner, but they can't tell you, hey, you need to wrap this up. Hey, like I told him, hey, y'all called this. And also, I thought it was kind of funny when I told him, I just need him to answer. That's right. If you want to see my cousin Vinny, he said, hey, just shout it out when you have an answer. I just wanted to say he had nothing to verify. Now, the state of Florida using the driver record as a basis for determining that your license was suspended, I don't want to misstate how the information I found relative to that. I'm challenging the accuracy of the record. So essentially, I'm going backwards in the process to say, okay, it could be in here. And I may actually put a case in there where I actually used, where Judge Farr, which I don't know if I've done a video for him yet, but Judge Farr essentially was trying to force me to use a public defender. So I started running up their check and making him go get all this other stuff that would take me time and resources. And I did tell the public defender, you know, when it's done, I'm going to fire you anyway, but I just want you all to go spend your money. And then you can tell them blah, blah, blah. I'll get into that case later on. But essentially, I'm going backwards in the process. I say, okay, show me where there was some due process of the suspension. There may be overlapping issues. And I would naturally appeal those issues because I'm still seeing nobody has proof that my license was legitimately suspended. That was always my argument. Meaning everything necessary to suspend that license did not take place. And thus, there's a violation of due process. Don't forget, violation of due process give you grounds in almost every situation for reversal. Because when it comes time to appeal, even if they want to claim it's a final order, you can argue jurisdiction. There's a whole lot of nuance involved. I don't want to get too far off into this, but where you can determine that there's some violation in process, you can probably get a successful reversal. And we can get into that later on. If you want me to break it down in another video or in a personal consultation, I'll do that and show you a lot more. Because there's a lot to this. There's thousands of hours of study that's gone into me getting this far because I was just determined to get these people off my back. Again, let's not get caught in the courtroom drama, and let's focus on the merits. And I probably could have shortened this case had I been more experienced. I didn't necessarily want the experience, but through my experiences, I probably could have narrowed this quite a bit.
That's fine.
Okay.
But I do have Trinity versus Pagliaro because it was introduced by the lawyer.
Let me see whatever case you have to support your argument. Let me see it now.
Am I allowed to use my phone and my computer?
Well, yeah, but you need to get it.
Where is it? You can Google it yourself.
No, I'm not gonna be doing your research. So you should have had that. Show
It
me
wasn't
right now.
necessary because we know that that's not a self-authenticating document. I'll end up doing it on appeal because the information in it is inaccurate. More importantly, you can't go outside the 5.
Pull your case, sir.
Say again, sir.
I said, get your case.
Now I'm gonna lower the volume on this because there's gonna be some dead area. But I was using my old computer, which had Windows 7 at the time. I never wanted to get rid of her. I loved her so much, but eventually,
Something wrong with it.
Go to 90.704. No, 7.
But you need to get it.
You can Google it yourself. This is going to be important, people.
I'm not gonna be doing your research. So you should have had that. The shot you put out there.
Because we know that that's not a self-authenticating document. I'll end up doing it on appeal. Because the information in it is inaccurate. More importantly, you can't go outside the 5.
Pull your case, sir.
Say again, sir?
I said, get your case.
You gotta give it a second. She's my old one.
Now hold on, we'll wait.
Yeah, I looked at something wrong with that. Go to 90.704. No, 702 and 705.
Hold on, which one now?
90. The evidence code.
9705.
90.705 and 90.702. I've already entered 90.604 because he's trying to testify the information he has no first-hand knowledge of, and you know he can't do that.
Okay. Well, that doesn't get you around this document right here, the Department of Motor Vehicle Safety certified record.
It's not certified. One of the states is not intended for sale, although they sold it, made $65 million in the last 10 years selling them.
That spontaneous comment was probably unnecessary, but it was factual. I found an article that said the state of Florida, well, actually the Department of Motor Vehicles, was selling people's driver's records. And if the state doesn't create revenue by selling things like that. So when I found that out, I said, that's kind of odd. I didn't delve much further into the selling of the driver record. But it was a pretty interesting article, and they made probably to date, probably over 100 million by now, because that was 7 years ago. And they had made over 65 million, I think is what the number is I use. So you might want to check your states and how they're making money doing these things and why, because there should be, well, in the Florida Constitution, there is an expressed provision that states that there has to be a set of rules that govern public responsibility and private interest when it comes to state agencies.
Business, not the state, not the government.
Once again, you're talking out loud.
I just know the Article 161 of the Constitution states all political power is guaranteed, and that the rights of one city herein shall not be construed to deny or impaired or obtained by the people. And that's the Constitution that we all know and uphold. More importantly, administrative agencies can impose penalties here. That's Article 1, Section 18.
You know I'm not listening,
I
right?
know you're not.
Okay. What else you said you had?
Sticker on that for on the back of that. So it was entered into evidence.
They do a whole lot of work waiting for me. My computer just want to take the rest of the afternoon off, people. I apologize. But I want to make sure you get the rest of this. It's just me doing a bunch of mumbling in the background of this one right here. You're not going to get anything really good out of it. He's going to probably give us another court date if I'm correct on how this kind of slides through. But he's taking care of a lot of work, waiting for my computer to start what she didn't want to start. And again, I'm definitely somewhere different today when it comes to information than I was back in 2015 when this case was going on. Might have been 2016 by now, March 9th of 2016. That's a date that lives in infamy for all of us. One, it's the day date Biggie was killed. And oddly enough, it was my ex-wife's birthday, so it was painful either way.
I'm gonna continue this for my ruling. Sir, you have 10 days to provide me with any case law. Okay?
Now, since he brought the suppression issue wouldn't be necessary because they already went beyond the 20 days that they needed to respond to the informational request and the counter.
The ticket, the citation itself, the request for money. Now look at the court, at the court docket. The docket said that you were going to address the counterclaim today. I don't know if it's the counterclaim against the state for my unlawful detainment. Because we can definitely go.
You can't file a counterclaim in this case.
On the citation, I absolutely can file a counterclaim.
Well, once again,
I'll give you
present
that.
the case law.
They ask me for money, I can ask them for money.
All right, April 27th, 8:30, I will make my ruling. And
Okay.
you need to have your case law to me by April 13th, 8:30.
Okay, I'll have it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If you want to come back on April 27th to hear my ruling, that's fine, or you don't have to. The state will call you and let you know.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Deputy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're heading to the home stretch of this this thing. And let me say this: start with Trinity versus Pagliaro and find something better when it comes to lawyers attempting to give information. Which we even in the Trayvon Martin trial, the one of the closing statements out of the prosecutor's office, and I'm not going to say what I thought about the prosecution of the case, was you've heard many statements from counsel, not that those statements are evidence, nor should they be construed to be as such. But that other than that, the counterclaim issue, I probably don't know what the hell I was talking about with that. I probably just let that go. I don't know how a counterclaim would be appropriate. I think the easiest thing, and I believe I mentioned it earlier in this video, is to win and do malicious prosecution. If there's somebody who knows a better way to effect a counterclaim for for a municipality or a state or what have you, filing a citation, then please show me. I do know how to do a counterclaim, but the other stuff, I don't know that it works, and if it does, I definitely would love to know. It probably helped quite a few people out with that. So we're going to get into what's the most important part of this case to me, which is the dismissal of the action. So without any further ado, as we've extended this thing a little bit longer than I was expecting to be here, let's get into the actual dismissal. And I'm going to say this early on. I think a lot of this was just BS. And I was irritated knowing that they attempted on this date here in August. So there's probably a few things between the March date now that extended it. It's almost as if they tried to reset the entire proceeding. But what I was able to do is I caught something, and you're going to see how it goes, and it's amazing what a drink of water will do, especially when the ancestors and the intervention of the Most High steps into play. Again, don't try all this at home. Focus on the information that's relevant to getting you what you want to, the facts of your case. And go back and check out that video about how to prepare for court. And you can glean from this video once we're done whatever you like. But let's get ahead. Let's get on and get this thing done.
If you're going to testify, raise your right hand. You swear the statement you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, number, the truth, so help you God? You may proceed, State.
Please say your name for the record.
Thank you, James Paul Maiello II,
Okay, Deputy, where are you currently employed?
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been so employed with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
A little over 5 years, sir.
Okay, what are some of your duties as a deputy with the Sheriff's Office?
Some of my duties include conducting traffic enforcement, conducting physical arrests, criminal investigations. Currently, I'm a field training officer. I train new officers.
Were you employed with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office on September 16, 2015?
Yes, sir, I was.
Were you on duty that day?
Yes, sir, I was.
While on duty, did you encounter an individual who subsequently became known to you as Sir Rick Doss?
I did, yes, sir.
Is that individual within the courtroom today?
Yes, sir, he is.
Would you please identify the individual by article of clothing he or she may be wearing?
Yes, sir, he's wearing a black t-shirt standing to the right of you.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the officer has identified the defendant?
So reflect.
Thank you, Your Honor. What were the circumstances under which you encountered Mr. Doss on September 16, 2015?
I was conducting traffic enforcement on 301 Highway, interchange of Interstate 75. I was conducting stationary traffic. I was parked on the inside shoulder, facing south, running radar enforcement for traffic. I was sitting on the inside shoulder. I observed a vehicle approaching me from behind.
Objection. We've already asked and answered this. We're beyond this. We're actually in my original cross-examination. So if we're going to pick it up, let's pick it up in cross-examination, not to mention I filed a motion to suppress. I want the record to reflect also that I'm here definitely under extreme duress. But with that being stated also, we're actually beyond a lot
You
of...
gonna let me rule?
Okay. Well, I want to make sure that we understand that we're beyond all this.
All right. Overrule. Go ahead.
Continue, sir.
Yes.
I observed a vehicle that was approaching me from behind. I was traveling southbound on 301 Highway. I visually estimated that vehicle's speed at 65 miles an hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. I activated my rear incoming radar antenna, and I observed a constant and steady Doppler tone, indicative of a vehicle that was exceeding the speed limit of 50 miles per hour.
Objection.
And are you certified to utilize the radar?
I am, yes, sir.
And was that radar in within compliance on September 16, 2015?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did this occur
Objection.
Did this occur
Well, hold on. What's the basis?
Objection.
What's your basis of your objection?
What proof?
What the reason?
Proof.
Proof.
Of the statement. Proof of the statement.
All right. I'm gonna have to sustain this thing. Give me something else. Provide the document. You have the documentation?
Yes, sir, I do.
Whoa, wait a minute. Oh, objection is outside the scope of discovery because when I asked for it originally, it wasn't provided. So you can't enter it today.
Hold on. Did he request to see the radar
Your Honor,
documents?
I have not seen any requests that indicated that.
It's called discovery pursuant to Rule 3.220.
Hold on. And talk to me, sir. Talk to me.
Judge, it's evident that
Let me see your documents where you requested
it
discovery.
should be in your. We are being beyond this. It's inside the clerk's file in the docket. Discovery.
Did he stop talking? Did he request discovery state?
He did request discovery.
Let me see what he said in his discovery request. You have a copy of it?
Your Honor, I do not. Your Honor, let me look in the. I'm not sure if it was requested in court because it was provided prior to me taking over the case, Your Honor.
Why we didn't provide him with the documentation regarding the radar?
Your Honor, because because that wasn't challenged and the underlying issue was the driving with license suspended. The reason for the stop was not questioned in the motion or anything of that nature.
And there's a motion to suppress and an objection to that also in that section. That's valid.
Hold on, sir. That probably doesn't relate though to whether
There is
we.
an underlying reason.
Oh, excuse me, sir. I'm gonna ask you to wait.
Your Honor, I do have the demand for discovery.
Okay. Let me take a look at it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let me say this real quick. I know everybody caught that. What they were trying, I guess, what they were trying to do. It's speculative for me to say they were doing anything underhanded. I'm not saying the judge in this case is doing anything underhanded. But it was just kind of strange, and I think my mind was kind of floating when it started. I was like, well, this is not where we're supposed to be, so we had to go ahead and put the other audios in, and I'm not going to do that tonight, of course. But it's just nice, because of the studying, I kind of had an idea at this time how the radar was supposed to work, the calibration dates, how often they're supposed to do it. So I actually did some research up to this point. So I'm telling you, if there's ever going to be a situation where you're dealing with a speeding ticket or what have you, and I guess even cops can watch this video, I don't really care, but make sure that you have everything necessary before you show up to deal with a speeding ticket. And by the way, the prosecutor in this situation, you see, is trying to reverse the issue because you don't have the driving without license unless you get the stop. So if I get rid of the stop, anything that comes as a result of the stop at that point becomes inadmissible. And you know, you can use the exclusionary rule at that point because information is improperly gained because the stop was improper. So, and check out the Fourth Amendment, and you'll kind of have a better understanding of what I mean by that.
I am specifically demanding all reports prepared for in connection with the case. Seems to kind of include that, man. Goodness gracious. I know it's hard to figure it out with all these other things he's asking for, but for some reason he did ask for that.
Excuse me, Your Honor. Not a drink of water.
Well, you can go ahead and leave. I'm going to dismiss the charge.
And I'll ask for dismissal of the.
I'm dismissing the cases.
Have a great day.
All right. Madam Clerk, anything else on this docket?
Now, so there you go. The case was dismissed. Now, what was interesting, because we had been there for, it seems like eons dealing with a traffic case, but a couple things from this. Staying with the case helps you when we're going to go over both dockets. Actually, the speeding ticket subsequently had to go anyway. When the speeding ticket went away, which is what they were essentially dismissing then, was anything that he wanted to use related to the speeding had to go away because you now violated the rules of discovery. So at that point, we don't have to even address the driver without license because you have no reason. You don't have a valid reason for the stop once the speeding is gone. So what we've learned from this is fighting does kind of help sometimes. And it's interesting how the outside the scope of discovery and the drink of water thing worked as well. So we got the W. That's what's most important in every situation. I appreciate Judge O'Neill. I think Artemis O'Neill being patient with me, and because of my noviceness in dealing with courtroom procedure and what have you. But ultimately, the merits of the case did show that I was entitled to the relief that I was granted. So whether they call it, and listen, when people tell you things about it's a technicality or a loophole, it's the law, LAW, and procedure matters, precedent matters, and being better than I was in this instance could probably help a lot as well. I think I was in a pretty decent place because of my general knowledge. I don't think I did the greatest job as far as the way I handled the entirety of it, but I was good enough and specific enough in areas that mattered. And as time has gone on, naturally, I'm learning to focus a lot more in on what's important. And you can do it as well if you take the time to study law. Don't study the law, study court cases. And I spent a lot of time inside of courtrooms preparing for these cases. So let me just show you what we call the proof, the receipts. First receipt here. Why is this thing popping up? Is the, here you go, me again. Officer Malio. The speeding. Yeah, 84. Court docket. Here you go. Case dismissed. I didn't make it up. It's there. And you can see there's a few pages of document history. So you see the citation, all this other kind of stuff. So we had how many court dates? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you see I did a lot of work there. Here's 6. I don't know what this letter to the judge is about, I can't remember. Oh, probably about this. 7, 8, 9. So I'm thinking about 9 court dates to get rid of this, which some people might not think is worth it. Yeah, a lot of time, and I spend most of my time as a stay-at-home pop for the most part doing this kind of stuff. So I was able to do okay. I had tremendous support in my endeavors from my family. So I'm definitely appreciative to them, mom, pops, brother, as far as fighting these cases. Let's cancel this right here. Make it smaller. So that's the speeding ticket. And here we have the actual driving out license case, the bond discharge, give it back. And there you go again. See that? DWLS dismissed. And we already know how many cases there were. So, that being the case, we have that done. I think I said I was going to show everybody. I was going to show you the Pacer situation. Let's see if it pops up again. Come down on this one. Now, let me tell you something about Pacer. Anybody who's ever done anything in a federal court case, you can find. And let me say this also. Simply because a lawsuit was filed doesn't mean that it's going to go anywhere, doesn't mean it's worth fly crap. Because filing the case is one thing, successfully winning the case is something else. And this is public access to court electronic records. Let's see. Here you can see I have an account here. And by the way, these things are free to sign up for. But let's go into the Middle District. And I have quite a few messes in here. So let's go Florida Middle District. Let's log in. And anybody who's done anything in a federal court, you can go do this. Now, the federal court does have the authority and the power to seal files, but you can see that the case took place. So let's do this simple thing, a query. And also, let me hip y'all with something else. You see right here the nature of the suits? You can go into here and you want to find a lawsuit. Now, Pacer charges, but I'll show you something with mine. But if you want to find out any suit that's been filed, you see the title and then the code. You can actually go here and pop, like hit right here, a federal auto negligence case. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull up cases that came under that code. So if you want to have an idea of how to file a lawsuit, just go in there and do that, and you can see some really good cases, and you can see how attorneys file, and that's definitely beneficial. So let's look for everything I've ever filed in here. Let's run this query. Oh, I put the case in. My fault. I put that kind of case in. So let's go backwards on this one. That's on me, people. Follow me. Let's do this. There you go. And you're going to say, wow, this guy's a defendant in a federal court case. Not like you think. The reason I was a defendant in that case is because I did a notice of removal to the federal court for a Department of Revenue case. They ended up remanding it, which they're going to do anyway because they're going to tend to abstain from family law cases. See this? So what I did, and I can show you this. This is what it looks like. Here's my notice of removal. And they essentially just remanded the case. I don't want to do that. Let's try that. And again, anyone can do this if you have time. You are on your hand. And you can see this one here that was filed. And you get all the exhibits and what have you. Let's view this filing. And actually, I'm going to tell you, this was a good filing. They sent it back down, and I ended up getting what I wanted in the lower court. But I think they were wrong on this one. At one time, I contemplated sending it to the 11th Circuit, but I got what I wanted, which is my license and some other stuff back. But here you go. So as you see, I filed it. Court came back and essentially said we're going to remand it, and they're going to abstain. And like I said, they fixed it at the lower level. But let's look at this case with Maio, whatever his name was. It's the last case that I filed in the federal court. Of course, pretty soon you'll see quite a few more cases in the federal court for other issues. And particularly because I won in the lower courts and some federal violations took place. So let's see. You'll find out that I was a plaintiff against the International Brotherhood of Teamsters and also against UPS, which we did. I settled that case, but let's see here. Here's your documents. I apologize for kind of fumbling through this, but you can actually see what I filed. And I filed this to preserve my date. So when the court dismisses without justice, without prejudice, you can always come back and relate back. So sometimes it's not really it's important that you stay timely because the federal courts are really stringent about how things are done. It's filed nonetheless because of the case that we just heard. So there you go. And like I said, it was dismissed without prejudice. It wasn't a big deal to me. I just wanted to make sure I preserved my time and didn't lose it. In fact, I got to do a couple more cases that I've won because of these driver without license. They just stopping me on the side of the dang road. So there you have it, folks. Another successful driver without license case. And if you like what you see, of course, you can always you can subscribe to the channel. You can support the channel. We take, CashApp, Zelle, PayPal, what have you. Or you can go, if you decide you may need any services from me, you can go to my website, gregdoss.com, and buy any of the services that we purchase any of the services that we do offer. I'll make sure I always wrap it up by telling you I am not an attorney. I do not practice law, study law, tell people what I've learned and how I've gathered information. I do always highly recommend that people seek the assistance of diligent and competent counsel in your efforts, because the bottom line is to win. However, if you find yourself in the situation I found myself in too often, that I couldn't afford it. Of course, my family probably could have, or I know they could have. I just chose to fight because I wanted the experience and to learn to take these matters head on, because you can't run from obstacles your whole life and expect to get good results. As always, in parting, sometimes it's not about right or wrong. More importantly, it's about clarity. And you'll never reach resolution if you're not willing to engage in honest dialogue, even if that dialogue is with yourself. Take time to hug the person you love and love the person you hug. On behalf of GD Non-Attorney Pro Se Consultant, I'm Greg Doss. I'm the infamous DJ Squid. I'm saying peace, chicken grease. I'm out of here.